for their contamination.
Thank you very much. And before we go on, I just want to acknowledge Senator Ricardo Lara, who represents this area and actually has been a champion on this issue and carried 2 bills trying to address these problems, one that was signed last year by the governor. So I just want to thank him for joining us for this hearing as well. And then we could proceed with the last 2 speakers, and then we'll have public comment.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair and members, for this opportunity to discuss our investigation and cleanup plan in the residential area around Exide. As part of this, I want to emphasize that this is a major undertaking and is unprecedented in California. Getting access to sample individual residential properties can be time-consuming. While we have a great deal of experience in getting access to properties surrounding contaminated sites, we have never had a site where we needed to gain access to nearly 10,000 individual properties. In addition, scheduling to be able to clean up a yard, you need to have access agreements and permission from the owner, and to do sampling, we're getting access from the residents. But scheduling access is a very personal issue and takes a great deal of time and consideration of the individual residents' needs. These cleanups can be very disruptive to families and need to be scheduled to minimize this disruption. This is a very different type of cleanup than most of our cleanups. It can be very difficult to standardize this and to expedite the cleanup. We're doing our best. We're trying new things to get access agreement and to communicate with the public, but those obstacles will remain throughout the cleanup. And I want to refer to some figures that we handed out. I'm not sure. I think it was in a package. It's this figure here. It's a map. Director Lee referred to this, and this is how we came to the understanding that the contamination was up to 1.7 miles away from the facility. It's a result from analysis of the data with 20,000 points. We're going to continue to fine-tune this with additional sampling and more refined analysis so we can better understand Exide's impacts to the community. In our sampling plan, our major goals are to rapidly screen the properties with proven technology and identify those properties with lead contamination very quickly. We want to prioritize properties so that we can address these properties that have the highest lead and exposure potential first. To do this, we're using a field sampling tool called X-ray fluorescent analyzer. It allows us to analyze the soil on the property in real time. It allows a crew to sample 3 to 6 properties in a day, providing instant results that we can share with the residents or tenants or the owner as they come out. Occasionally, it might take up to 1 or 2 days, and this will certainly allow us to sample up to the 1,500 properties within this fiscal year. And I want to refer to a second map. I don't know what number it is. It's this map here. It's kind of a very complicated map with Exide orange in the middle. I can see what number we labeled it. 8. It should be number 8 in the package we handed out today. And because I think folks have been referring to various areas and things on the site, and so this, I think, map will help illustrate that. In the center, in orange, is the Exide facility. And I think the next feature to notice is sort of an unusual shape that's in a gray line. That's kind of the next circle out. That is the air model indicating what the most likely areas of impact from Exide's emissions. The next to look at is what we're, the initial area is it's a very small area, kind of pinkish, within that blue line in the north and the south. And those are the areas where we initially went out and sampled homes and where the cleanup of the homes took place last year and the year before. The next area I want to highlight is the northern expanded area and the southern expanded area, and those were expansions after we got results from the initial areas that these properties did have extensive contamination. And then based on other analysis we did, we're now referring to some areas called focused areas. These are areas based on that air model that are the most likely to be impacted and impacted the most. And I'll refer to those later. And then, of course, you'll see a yellow circle, which indicates the 1.7 miles. And then the dark blue line surrounding that is what we're now calling, Director Ree referred to as the preliminary area of interest, and that's the area of homes that were identified to be sampled as part of this project. And so our plan to continue sampling is to have a public outreach. It's a major part of this project is to get access agreements. So recently we sent out a broad notification. We sent out mass mailing to focused areas. And we're partnering, and Anna will speak later to this, with community organizations to maximize our outreach. And we're going to prioritize areas, and our focus is going to be on those dark blue focused areas, and then areas within the blue line on a first come, first served basis as resources are available. As part of this, we're going to be meeting with property owners and tenants so that they're aware of the results. And then I'm going to go very quickly through our sampling process. It's another figure in a map. It shows a house and a garage. This is how we'll be sampling each of the properties. We'll be taking 10 samples from the front yards and backyards, collecting samples mostly in the surface with 2 samples at depth, and then also using 5 samples to go at areas that are unique to each home for play areas, areas and garages that children may have access to. We'll be taking samples mainly in the shallow area, which is the greatest area of exposure. We'll also be doing some exterior paint assessment, and I'll be going into that in detail a little later. But we put our sampling plan together very carefully, and we followed U.S. EPA guidance to accomplish 4 goals: to assess the lead concentrations at each property, to be able to use that information to prioritize the properties, to show to find out the highest levels of lead, and to determine where the lead is so that we don't have to go back out. So our investigation will be able to go directly to cleanup without further sampling or assessment, and also to determine if there's any other contributions to lead besides Exide so that we can enhance our cost recovery case against the responsible parties.
And if we could wrap up, because we have one more speaker after you, and it's 5:20.
Okay. All right. So I'll skip over our prioritization scheme. I think it's in the record. Priority 1, 2, and 3. I think I went over our draft plan for cleanup is to address 50 properties this year within the expanded area. And we'll be restoring the properties after we finish cleaning up. And then we'll also have an interior cleaning that'll be offered to the homeowner to the homeowner and tenant. I'll go into that in just a minute. I think there's general issues with lead in soil in urban environments. There's significant data that indicate Exide's contamination is as far as 1.7 miles from the facility, but there's also other possible contributions. Lead from gasoline, older gasoline, there's other industry sources, and there's also a possible lead paint contribution, and we need to be mindful of all these so that we can hold Exide accountable. The next figure shows some lead-based paint. I don't know that we want to belabor this issue, and it's not that all homes have these conditions, but I think we need to be mindful that these conditions do exist and that it's important that we look at those. And Director Lee mentioned that we want to be sure that these paint chips don't recontaminate the property when a owner feels that the home is safe, and these lead paint chips can recontaminate the property. And this picture shows that before we could even backfill a property, the chips were falling in the soil and recontaminating it. And we need to be mindful of that.
Let's not repeat information that's already been put on record by DTSC.
Okay. All right.
Move on.
Okay. And we'll be doing cleanup inside the homes. Best practices include cleanup of each residence following the cleanup. Our previous practice included a voucher and a discussion during the scheduling meeting. Our new practice is going to include a very comprehensive discussion when we meet with the tenants so that we can schedule this indoor cleaning at the same time we schedule the outside cleaning. Anna will speak a little more to that, and we're going to do follow-up in areas that have already been cleaned up where we did not have the participation in this program that we need.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening, Chairman Alejo, Assembly members, guests, and I just wanted to thank, I know that many community members had to leave, but I really wanted to thank the community members who are still here and who came earlier. It's extremely important to hear the experiences of community members living in the community, and also just want to acknowledge that their presence is very powerful and very important. My name is Ana Mascareñas, and I started 7 months ago as the Assistant Director for Environmental Justice and Tribal Affairs at DTSC. Before working at DTSC, I lived and worked for 9 years in Los Angeles, first in a local congressional office and then with a social justice and environmental health nonprofit. I recently completed a Master of Public Health at UCLA. And I just wanted to share that as a community member on the east side of LA, I attended several meetings when Exide was still operating. I can understand the deep frustration felt by many in the room. My health, the health of friends and loved ones, was put at risk by the way this facility operated. So in my role at the department, I'll be promoting close collaboration with communities as an important way to advance environmental justice and create better outcomes for the people of California. I know that DTSC can and must do better in our work to protect people's health and restore the environment for all Californians. When it comes to vulnerable, disadvantaged, and highly impacted communities like those surrounding Exide, we must bring more resources to bear to address complex environmental health problems like lead exposure. Today, I'll be highlighting some of the public outreach that's been underway in communities surrounding Exide, mostly over the past year since this panel is focused on residential cleanup. In an effort to continue improving community engagement, DTSC shared a draft plan in November. I believe it was included as part of the background materials, and it outlines basic strategies and 3 main goals. So to outline those goals, number 1, the department aims to inform affected communities about lead sampling and cleanup activities associated with Exide and the closure of the facility. Number 2, collaborate closely with communities, local governments, nonprofit organizations, legislative offices, and other agencies on these engagement strategies. And number 3, protect public health by ensuring that information is made available to communities and resources are allocated appropriately. Over the past year, DTSC has participated in more than 20 public meetings and other forums to inform the community and has distributed tens of thousands of notices about activities and information to residents around Exide. As described earlier today, starting in May 2015, DTSC collaborated with the South Coast Air Quality Management District to convene an advisory group. It's a forum for communities to discuss their needs and concerns related to closure and cleanup. This group includes community representatives, elected officials, and government agencies. The group has met 8 times and selected the technical advisor who presented earlier today, provided by DTSC and AQMD, and is meant as a support to community members on the advisory group when they're looking at these complex issues. I just want to highlight that hearing concern and frustration from community members about the advisory group structure and effectiveness, we've now worked consistently with a facilitator since August, have improved on follow-up actions to the group, and next we'll be working towards agreement on a governance charter. We want to make sure these meetings provide information and the best forum to hear concerns and provide answers. Even with this progress, we know there are more improvements to be made. To help communicate information on health risks and public health, the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment has presented information to the advisory group and at public meetings about California's health screening level for lead and steps that community can take to protect themselves from lead exposure. I'd also like to acknowledge that the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, OEHA, are in the audience today. Thank you. In October 2015, the department announced it would mail sampling access agreements to properties in 3 focus areas described earlier. And approximately 8,000 notices were mailed. All information was provided in English and Spanish. This information is also posted on the department's website, and we're aiming to improve electronic information as well. With that mailing, in addition to continued meetings and building outreach efforts, has yielded 411 access agreements and 137 additional homes that have been sampled since November. And as noted earlier, the department is supporting 2 pilot projects, working with 2 community-based organizations going door to door in the focus areas to communicate and share information. These efforts are getting underway, and we know that by collaborating with community leaders and connecting with existing community networks, we can continue to improve the process of sharing information. As mentioned earlier, we've also heard and understood concerns regarding the interior cleaning done previously, and we take those concerns and the advice provided by the community and other agencies very seriously. One aspect of the improvement is that as homes are being scheduled for cleanup of the exterior, the interior is being scheduled as well, and we're working towards materials that are going to best communicate what all of that entails. In response to community concerns, we developed a way for tenants, not just property owners, to allow sampling of soil in the property. This is extremely important because so many communities don't have owner-occupied properties. And so if you're looking at the public health risks and concerns of families, it's who's living there at the property. And so we heard that and made that change with this with the sampling that's taking place right now. As we receive community feedback, we're continuing to revise outreach materials and also working with a weekly coordination with the LA County Department of Public Health. They're also conducting outreach, and we're making sure our efforts are coordinated and that they're providing the maximum benefit to the community.
If you could please wrap up, because we have a few more questions and we got to wrap up.
Sure thing. I want to highlight one initiative that's underway to actively support collaborations in public health and support in local economy. Next month, we're co-hosting with several community-based organizations and 2 charter schools, a community training on the science behind the XRF analyzer, which is the tool being used to test for lead in soil. The training will discuss health and safety risks and information, the science behind what's being used. It's an effort to empower the community to learn more about the cleanup effort and also build technical skills, job skills. That first training is scheduled for February 19th. In closing, I just want to acknowledge that I know we must redouble our efforts in sampling and to keep working towards rebuilding trust, to making important and consistent progress so we can deliver on the kinds of actions all of our communities deserve.
Two quick questions. It was mentioned that blood testing is taking place, and I think that data is being collected by the County of Los Angeles. How is that data being used, and will it be available to the public at some time in the hopefully near future?
The data are being collected by LA County Public Health. Those data are also reported up to the California Department of Public Health, and we've been working with them on ways to make the data available that don't compromise the privacy of the participants in the blood lead testing. So their privacy is safeguarded as part of the whole blood lead testing program in the state, but we do have some ways we think that we can make the data available to the public. So we've been working with CDPH and the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment on putting that together. That's an analysis they've been doing, and we hope that we'll be able to share that with you in the not too distant future. And
Director Lee, also going back to the 1,500 homes being tested in 1 year, before we close this hearing, I want to just reiterate what resources do we need to move that along quicker? Under that pace, we take us 7 years to complete just that testing. Would you allow or inform the administration and the legislature what you need in order to move this along quicker? And I think you heard it from some of the community members, a frustration that this is going to take years. I mean, they took years to have this place closed, and then to hear it's going to take many more years just to test and slow down and then clean up. I get sense where they're going to come from too, and the local elected representatives, the state legislators. It's hard to go back home and said this is going to take another 10 years. So if you have the resources this year and you have a legislature that's open to trying to address it, you guys are our lead state agency. What do we need to make this move along, put this on a quicker, what's the roadmap to get to the work getting done quicker?
So I think we're right now, because although the earlier test, there was earlier testing done, it was done by contractors, paid for by Exide, and we had some oversight over it. We are now having our own contractors doing the work, and the testing program is different now than it was then. So we are right now actively collecting data on how long it's taking, and we're expecting as these teams build up some expertise, they're going to be able to go a little bit quicker. So I'm hoping we'll be able to provide some information about how many properties a team can reasonably screen in what time period, and then we can talk about how many teams it's appropriate to have out working.
And we have a vote on our budget in June. That's why I'm asking in this time frame, this legislative year, to move this, give you the resource and your agency the resource to do a better job. I think it was very helpful hearing from the public and the local electeds, and that's why I want to commit for the many residents who had to leave today, to do a hearing closer to home by this committee and work with Senator Lara, Senator Kevin De Leon, and Assembly Members Garcia and Miguel Santiago, and Speaker-elect Rendon, and certainly our Supervisor Solis, so that we could have a hearing. But the goal is, if we have another hearing in Los Angeles, not just to hear the same testimony, but to see the progress that has been made, that we could, in a few months, could report back to the public we made significant progress, and that the legislature hopefully can commit to put some significant resources forward to let you do that work, and the community could see some real turnaround rather than saying that it's going to take a long time. That's hopefully my goal, and that if we have a hearing closer to home in the future, that would be the purpose.
I have definitely gotten that message here today, and we are going to be working with the administration and the legislature on what the shape of that should look like. So, yes, I agree.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from members? Seeing none, thank you very much for the panelists. And I know a lot of community members left, but if there's anybody else in the audience who would like to come and speak for a couple minutes, I want to thank you for waiting so long.
Public participation?
Yeah, and any members of the public could come up to the table here. I'll give you a couple minutes.
Can you direct this to them in case they can? I'd like to read that first.
We just have one speaker. Yeah, she could come to the table. She waited a long time. Yeah. When you wait that long, you could come up. Yeah, I know. And I thank you for joining us. Anyone else? If there's any other members, if you could come up to the table, that way we move along quicker. See none. If you could just state your name for people watching at home.
First of all, thank you, everyone, for being so patient and letting the community come forward, even though it's the end of the day and everything. And
if you could just make sure the microphone's
on. Oh, sorry.
On.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My name is Dolores Mejia with Eastside Coalition Against Exide, Toxic Technologies, and all their partners in crime. First of all, I thank you for letting me speak, and I'll try to make it as quick as possible. I've pretty much written my talking points, so I won't try to stray and just kind of wander wildly, which I could do, but I promise not to. A gentleman, Joe Gonzalez, the sister and brother that were here and testified earlier, and they've been quite popular in the media. We need it. It is a risk when you put yourself out there like that. So I really respect Harry Cano and her brother Joe Gonzalez from our community in Boyle Heights for sharing their story. That's very heart-wrenching. Joe Gonzalez had to leave with this bus. I don't know why they left so early, but anyhow, he did sign it and ask if I would read his story. He wanted to publicly participate. Would that be okay? Can I read his comment?
We got about 3 minutes to either make your comments or just read his comments.
Okay, then I'll submit this on his behalf.
We'll take that for the record.
Okay, let me try to rush through this here as best I can. Just so you know, I am from Boyle Heights. I'm from East Los Angeles. I live in East Los Angeles now. I am originally from Boyle Heights and East Los Angeles, lifetime, off and on. Married and outside of the state of Arizona. My grandchildren are there. And that's why on occasion I have to go out there. My grandson recently had a laser eye surgery. He's only 18 and became to the 3rd degree. I don't know what it's called, of diabetic. And some personal things befell me on this trip, and so therefore I apologize if I came late. And I'm trying to pull myself together here.
That's okay.
Let me go ahead. Let me tell you the points. These are the issues that I understand it. Why I just found out on Friday. And this is an issue that I bring up right now because it is important that when we designate funds for the purpose of remediating our communities and for the responsible removal of toxic technologies like Exide toxic technologies, I'm urging that we appoint, that you all appoint an external outside monitor to secure that these funds are being, used responsibly and as effectively as possible. Okay, I'm just going to go through these talking points as quickly as I can, and it's the end of the day, but I'm going to tell you, I hope you'll see that they are important. I don't understand why, and I may be wrong, if somebody could correct me. Every time I look at a Exide closure plan, a certain draft, I never see the mention of a GPS tracking system. which would go to the transportation of the hazardous waste. As you know, due to that Senate investigative, I believe it's an investigation of DTSC, as you mentioned earlier, which is kind of triggered from the Golden Wasteland report out of Consumer Watchdog, that they, that study exposed the fact that thousands, possibly even hundreds of thousands of manifests disappeared, which means that we don't know where this toxic waste is that was being transported by DTSC. I know today we're talking about Exide, but I'm just saying for that purpose, it was mentioned. These are points that were brought up in public at a public participation like we are right now, and it's been repeatedly brought up to the Exide DTSC Community Advisory Group. They've never considered any of these. They've never discussed these issues, and I'm going to name a few of them. Never considered them, never proposed it.
You have 1 minute, so we have to be on time here.
I've waited a long time, Mr. Alejo, por favor. I'm going to try to go to this. Hold on.
been speaking
GPS
for
tracking system, tenting and quarantine, all Exide toxic technologies, equipment, and hazardous materials, not just when they're going to remove them. I personally have presented information about ADA compliance, which would actually circumvent the less efficient methods that are used now to notify the public about, toxic testing, etc. Declaring a state of emergency. Let's get with that. I've had some interested persons here. I think it was, I don't know if it was Rendon's office, but Mr. Irving de la O was interested in that and was taking it to his staff, the people he works with. Declaring the state of emergency would innovate resources through the emergency services systems at all levels: city, county, state, national, international, California Conservation Corps, FEMA, Department of Justice. These are ways that we can actually, and we can still bill Exide for them, but we can get this stuff done without producing a cash amount of money and then get a bid for house per house per house. Why are we not doing a bid for like a whole area? A whole, a mile area. A mile area that we know we can just basically pretty much reasonably presume if a school is been toxic tested and it needs immediate remediation, we can pretty much presume that a block, the whole block is toxic. Let's just go like that, because I don't know about you guys, but do you guys buy your eggs when you go to the grocery store, egg by egg? No. I think you do it by the dozen. Yes, sir. I'm going to try to move along here, sir. Just a moment.
No, I let you speak for 5 minutes already, so we have to move on and close this hearing. So
could you allow me to just go to the...
Just...
I'm a little disappointed because I want to let you know that, yes, I'm going to leave the mic, but I'm very disappointed. And whether I have the mic or not, whether it's on, televised or not, I'm very disappointed that these advisory groups that are being produced with the funds from this state, public funds, are operating like a private business.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Ma'am. Thank you.
You guys know who I'm talking about.
Thank you very much.
And I'll just have to do a national level.
Thank you, ma'am. You can. We will take that into the record. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. No, it's okay.
Now I'm going to hitchhike probably home because they had a bus that brought everybody here, but they didn't tell the community. They just selectively chose EJ, ambassadors to come.
Thank you, ma'am, for coming here. And we will do another hearing closer to home, so it's easier for the residents. Any other closing comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I want to really thank you all for coming here today. I really appreciate all those who traveled long ways to join us and share their perspectives. And as has been said, the closure of the Exide facility in Vernon and subsequent cleanup could be the biggest and costliest in California and maybe in U.S. history. It's important that the facility is closed properly and expeditiously, and certainly promptly to protect these communities from any more pollution and concurrently clean up the toxic waste that has polluted these communities from years of operations as fast as possible. It is the state's job to protect California's people, our families, the environment from harmful effects of toxic substances by enforcing hazardous waste laws, reducing hazardous waste generation, and expeditiously remediating polluted sites. As the STM committee chair, it's my job to keep an eye on the process and make sure it gets done, and we commit to doing just that. I want to reiterate that my door and those of my staff are always open to members of the public. We will keep this record open for 2 more weeks for additional comments and letters that can be submitted. But I look forward to having a hearing in Los Angeles County near this site where we can invite more members of the public to testify and giving the public more time to provide their comment and input. And I look forward to working with Assembly members Santiago, Garcia, and Rendon, and certainly our senators that represent these areas to make sure that we're making progress as needed. With that, I want to thank you all for joining us, and we'll adjourn this hearing.